Wow. If you are a survivor of narcissistic abuse, you're probably seeing some pretty familiar patterns in this ongoing divorce battle between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. What am I talking about? Well, in 2016, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie announced that they were getting divorced. And since then, there has been so many stories, so many little pieces and tidbits of information that have come out that have painted some shocking red flags for Mr. Pitt here. As a survivor of narcissistic abuse, for me, it all starts right here in the September 2016 plane incident that happened between Brad and Angelina and the kid. See, according to documents that were filed with the FBI who had to respond to this incident, Brad and Angelina had a big disagreement over their children, over some kind of parenting decision. According to the documents with the FBI, Brad said at the start of this disagreement, that kid looks like a Columbine kid, which obviously led to a strong response from Angelina, so the two went to the back of the plane to continue the argument. It was here that it was alleged that Brad grabbed Angelina by the head and shook her, grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her, and punched the ceiling of the plane multiple times, all the while the children are watching this. Concerned, again, according to this report, one of the kids said, "What's going on? Is mommy okay?" And supposedly, allegedly, Brad responded, "No, mommy's not okay. She's ruining this family. She's crazy." Now, if any of that is true, we're seeing a big pattern, right? Because we see in households where they have narcissistic abuse going on, we see gaslighting like this happening, right? Abuse happens, someone shows concern, and they are gaslit by the narcissistic personality who says, "No, this person's just being crazy. I'm not the problem. My reaction's not the problem. It's this person who's the problem, who's being abused." Now, it was also during this encounter in 2016 that Angelina said allegedly that Brad also crossed the line by finally abusing the children. According to this report with the FBI, and again, this little piece wasn't released until 2022, but in that original report, it said that Brad choked one of the children and struck another in the face, and also grabbed and shook her, Angelina. Now, no criminal charges were ever filed against Brad for this, but let me tell you, from this moment on, things change in that family and the red flags just keep coming. Now, in November of 2016, after Angelina had filed for divorce and the two were separating things, there started a nasty custody battle. Brad Pitt filed for joint custody of the children, and it was given to Angelina. Angelina got full physical custody of the children, even though no charges had been filed against Brad, and he was only granted therapeutic rights to the children, and the two were made to put in a child safety agreement, right, from the Department of Child and Family Services. And you can read it all right here for yourself if you want to. In September, Pitt and Jolie had both agreed to a Department of Children and Family Services safety plan, which was a temporary custody agreement over their children. They each agreed to individual counseling. Pitt gave up drinking and began spending time in Alcoholics Anonymous. This obviously did not settle the situation and did not repair things between Brad and the children, because by the end of 2016 and going into 2017, Brad was going to the press, which again is a huge red flag, and saying things, threatening Angelina, saying things like, "I will see my children by the end of the holidays," and like making these really grandiose demands, which he really didn't have the right to make, right? Because through the involvement of Child Protective Services, Family and Children's Services, Brad had only been granted therapeutic rights to the children, which means he was only allowed to see his children in the presence of a therapist. And those visits were to be determined and approved by a therapist. That's a big deal. And as if those red flags weren't enough, right? We're seeing an environment in which children, at the very least, emotionally are not safe. In 2017, again, in May, by the time we get to May of 2017, Brad Pitt starts going on this victim's journey in the public eye. He says this whole thing about, "I can see now that we were competing and trying to destroy each other, but it was just hatred. I've just done this to myself. I don't know why I'm not allowed to see my children." And while Brad Pitt was going on this interview, painting himself as this poor, done-by man, Jolie was just saying to the press, "We're healing from everything that's happened. The kids are being very brave. Thank you." Now that changes a little bit when we get to 2018, because by this point, we've got Brad, again, throwing up another petty red flag. He apparently files in court in 2018 saying that Angelina owes him child support. And Angelina's response to me is really so funny and so interesting because she basically says, okay, well, our agreements about funding the children have been informal up until now, but if Mr. Pitt wants to do this, fine, let's do it. I want a retroactive child support order. I want to see what child support Mr. Pitt owes me, the full-time caregiver of these children. Which again, on his part, it just seems like such a narcissistic move, and on her part, brilliant chef's kiss. After that, it got quiet for a while, but then here we go, right? These are the last of the really big red flags for me for Mr. Pitt that maybe goes, hey, hello, narcissism, that you? In 2021, Brad and Angelina began this vicious fight over this winery that they owned. Angelina said, I want out. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I want to sell this to you, Brad. Just let me out of it. And her statement when she did this was super telling to me, and there's a lot of context in it. Because she basically says, it's so hard for me to do this, but I have to get out of this winery because of the alcohol. Because it's tied to alcohol, and alcohol is what has destroyed our family. She says that it was a place that she loved. They brought their twins home there, but now it was heartbreaking to her because it signifies the end of their relationship. AKA hinting that someone potentially, allegedly has a substance abuse problem that started here. And despite Angelina offering Brad a very tidy sum of $54.5 million to buy out her half of the winery, he refused to do it. He wanted to go to court, and their custody battle kicked up. He took her back for the custody battle. He was back in the papers alleging things about her, yada, yada, yada. So she sold it to a Russian oligarch for $67 million. And it's kind of continued on that way, with Brad filing things in court and Angelina just trying to get out of it as quickly and painlessly as possible. But to me, the biggest barometer of truth is with the children. Because you see, Shiloh is not the only one who said, I don't want to be any part of my father's life. Pax was the first one to stand up in 2020 when he was 16 years old by posting this to his private stories, which basically says, hey, Brad Pitt, my father, you're a horrible human being, and I hope you roast for it. Next, in 2023, when Zahara went to college, she went to college without Brad's name. And when she gave an interview in Essence magazine about getting into Spelman College and joining the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, she was very clear. Her last name was Jolie, not Jolie Pitt. And even more has continued to come out. For instance, it's now been revealed that when Brad Pitt went to court in 2021 to get custody of his children, the judge that granted him joint custody was later thrown out of the thing. His whole judgment was thrown out because it turned out that this judge had business ties with Brad Pitt's lawyers. And we now know that the 2016 altercation, according to Angelina, was not the first time she was physically and emotionally abused by Brad. According to her, there's even more, and unless Brad finally lets her go and stops pulling all these strings in court, which again, what do narcissists do? Oh yeah, abuse you through the court system. Until he lets her go, she's going to continue to expose things, especially as her children get older. What do you think about this ongoing drama? Do you see narcissistic red flags with Brad Pitt? Do you see examples of abuse, financial abuse, court abuse, physical abuse? What do you think of the children's reactions to Brad? I would love to know what you think in the comments. Let me know and make sure you're following for more.